inspiring and exciting episode of On Location with Zara Durrani. We're here in the heart of Kitsilano at the beautiful Simpatico restaurant, a family-run restaurant that's been here for 55 years. So come by and let them know that you heard about it from On Location with Zara. Our show is produced with the support of TELUS STORYHIVE. Joining me today is someone who's had a very fabulous career. She was not born in Vancouver originally, but she's been working here for over a decade. She played Diana Ross, touring across Europe, across UK. She's a singer and actress, and you may recognize her from your favorite show, When Calls the Heart, as well as many other local shows that are filmed here in Vancouver. And she just finished wrapping her film Legend of the Lost Locket with Viv Leacock, who was a guest on our show. I'm talking about none other than the lovely and talented Natasha Burnett. Welcome!
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
So lovely to meet you finally.
Yeah,
I feel like I've seen you on screen, on television and Instagram, and then to see you in person. Absolutely beautiful. And you know, there's something about accents. As soon as you walked in, I was like, oh, I love your proper British accent. Do you hear that a lot here?
I do. You know, once people really figure it out, sometimes I think it's Australian.
What?
Sometimes.
This is, you know, I love a good proper British accent. Like Aussies, I feel like it doesn't really have that charm.
Fair.
Just for me, just from my ears, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
I listen to quite a few podcasters and Instagrammers who do who've written books, and when you're listening to someone, there's something about, wow, I believe everything you're saying. You can't do anything wrong. You know, it's like, it's the type of accent that, you know, you could be getting a ticket and you're like, oh, but sorry, officer. Maybe that's just my imagination that you can talk yourself out of anything.
That would probably work. You know, if I'm not in England, it wouldn't work for British people, naturally. Probably here or something. I could just sort of say, I'm sorry, officer, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, with everyone who joins us on this show, I know you've had an incredible career, but I'd like to start from the beginning and talk about your journey. Did you always know you wanted to act? Was performance that something came naturally to you? Were your parents artists, performers?
So my mum used to love singing, just in general. It wasn't, at one point I think she thought she wanted to maybe be in the industry, and then she realised that it's not really all fun and games, and she thought, well, I'm not really wanting to deal with people who tell me what to do all the time. So she decided it wasn't for her. But for me, I was always doing things at school. It came very naturally to me, and to be honest, some of my teachers felt it's best for me to remain in the performing arts and not be academic. Although I enjoyed physics and sociology, they were my two favourite subjects, and I really enjoyed doing that, but they always steered me towards performing.
Because that was something that's where you shine the most.
Yes, that and athletics. So yeah, that was my sport, and entertainment were my two genres.
So you're from Surrey, UK.
Yes.
And I moved to Canada at 17 from Pakistan with my family, and we moved to Surrey, BC. You know, and I have a really good friend we were talking about earlier, who's a photographer, lives in Surrey, UK. Tell us about life in Surrey, UK. What was that like growing up?
It's definitely suburbia. A very nice suburbia. It's just outside of London, so it borders London. So in certain cases it's Surrey, and others it's the London Borough of. So it's a nice distance from London, and it's just enough greenery and peace and quiet with enough of the London energy with it. So I actually would never, if I'm in the UK, for sure, I wouldn't stray from Surrey in general, because there are other parts of Surrey you can go to which takes you further out into the peace and quiet, and you really no more than sort of 30 minutes away from either London or being further out and enjoying both sides of life.
I never made it that way so far. I feel like the furthest I've been is like zone 5
Right?
on my Oyster card.
Oyster card.
I know. I need to do it with that accent. Oyster card. Yes. So one of my friends from Pakistan who I went to college with there, she lived in zone 5.
Right.
So, it was always like, okay, take this train and then this one and that one. And thank goodness for Google and a lot of people helping me out. I never got lost.
That's good. That's good.
Compared to Vancouver, when you're in London, you're just like, oh my goodness, like, this is a big city. Yes. This is, the trains, the metro is full, or you guys call it metro or subway? Train, I'm trying to remember.
Well, it's the underground.
Underground, yes. Underground. In Paris, they call it the metro.
That's
so,
right.
Yes, so it's the underground. And what is it? Mind your gap. My little memories of being in London. So, you've been in Canada for some time, but let's backtrack. You were focusing on being an artist, performing through your schooling years. How did you land the role, the iconic role, to play Diana Ross? Tell us about that.
So once I had actually left school, my mum had initially tried to get me to go to university, as my sister had done.
Okay.
And so when my sister was going to view them, she would take me with her just to maybe see if I would be that way inclined. And I was, no, that's not for me. So she suggested that I consider a vocation that can be done at any time, something that I might enjoy. And so I first went into hairdressing. I thought I really wanted to do hairdressing, and I think it just didn't fulfill me in the way I thought it would at all. And so I turned to beauty and cosmetology, and I did a 10-month private course in London at the London School of Beauty and Makeup, and got my credentials to be a cosmetologist.
I feel like all these things are literally like stacking up for you to be a performer who can do her own hair, skincare, and makeup. You don't even need the hair and makeup team.
Right?
Yeah.
So I came out of that, and then Mum said, okay, great, go off and do whatever it is that you want to do. And I started looking in newspapers. They used to have ads in newspapers. We have a newspaper called The Stage, which is specifically for performers and entertainment. And I was scrolling through the newspaper, and I saw an ad for a Motown show. I'd never done an audition before, of any kind. So I decided I wanted to go and try this out. Of course, I end up going to the audition completely inappropriately dressed. Everyone else is there in their Diana Ross attire, their wig, and I'm in the most frumpy outfit. My glasses, no makeup. I had no idea. So I go in, I sing Baby Love, that's my song.
Oh, I love that song.
I leave there thinking this is not gonna go well, since I was the only one that was completely inappropriately dressed. But by the time I got back to the train station, they gave me a call and they said that they wanted to work with me.
No way, you must have blown them away.
I imagine.
Obviously. So tell me about the experience of giving that audition, because I feel like a story like that is so, often when you hear, oh, I was just accompanying someone else and they just happened to ask me. It's almost like you were meant to do what you're doing now. Not even knowing how to.
Yes.
And I'm sure all the other actors who are there, they're like, what is this girl doing? And who does she think she is?
Exactly. It was definitely an experience for me. And one, like you said, it's so unassuming to go into a situation like that and not have any expectations. have no idea of what could come from it. But sometimes I think because I wasn't nervous in that way, or even over prepared, maybe that helped in some way. And I was quite young at the time, so they felt that I was able to be molded as an artist, and I really wanted to play this role, so I would always go online, look at the videos of Diana Ross. And
Like
watch
even
videos.
before the audition.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you
I
connected
was-
with her.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
always a very big fan. But then, of course, I had, I would say, performance anxiety in the beginning. And although I did the audition and did what I needed to do, all of a sudden, they had taken me to a show and they said, okay, well, you can get on stage and we'll get you to just do one song. And I was so scared. I didn't know how to perform. I didn't know what to do. I felt like any gesture or
You were
move that I
frozen.
made would look silly. So I just would stand there and sing. And they said to me at one point, we want you to be the lead, but you're going to have to work on this, because the reason why one of the other girls ended up singing a couple of the songs is because they had the performance style, they had the confidence, and it took me a minute. It took me a minute to
Because
get there.
there's that audience, like which is so different than in high school, and now you're like,
Yes.
you
And
went to
they're
school to
watching
study
you.
makeup and hair
Yeah.
and all of, to go from I'm just gonna be behind the scenes to now performing center stage,
Yes.
the lead, and not just any story.
Yeah.
An icon.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that people who are not necessarily in the industry, it can seem easier than it actually is. And I think being young, I had that same mentality. I just go on stage and when I'm in my bedroom and I'm dancing to Destiny's Child and I'm singing along, this is good, right? This is easy. Just people will be sitting there, and all of a sudden I was on stage and I knew all eyes were on me, and you just feel like people are waiting for you to do something, and I would stand there and actually be thinking, do something, perform, do anything with your hands, walk across stage, anything, and I just couldn't do it. I was just too nervous that it was looking bad.
And this was the first audition.
Yeah, this was after the first audition.
After the first audition.
Yeah, when I went on stage. So that didn't last for too long. I ended up going to Spain. They had sent me to Spain with the other two girls, because now we were a trio. They sent me to Spain, and I did that show in like a bar in Benidorm, and that was helpful for me, because I think just being in a situation where it was more of a club vibe.
And it's relaxed, and people are not going to see this musical performance.
No, exactly.
Where you can just be fun and get this energy from the audience, who's also, a little bit inebriated, and they're just singing along with you, they're cheering you on. It's not people who are just sitting, and it's not people who are just sitting in these seats and they're just sitting. They're probably singing with you, right? And dancing.
It's not the same as if you're watching a theatre show, where everybody just wants to see you do the performance. Like you said, everybody's just enjoying it as much as you, almost like secondary karaoke. And I wasn't in my full dress, it was more casual, so we all just wore the same dresses and things like that. But it was in Benidorm that one of the promoters had contacted our manager and said, okay, so we want to do this specific show, Magic of Motown. So at that point, I was more ready to perform as Diana Ross, and I flew back.
And at that moment, sorry to jump in, at that moment, did you think that, oh, maybe this is a thing, this is fun, like, I will see where it goes, or this is just for the time being that I'm just having some fun and then I will go back to hair? Or did you already decide that I think there's something to this, like maybe I'll see how far I can take this?
Yeah, I think at that point I decided I had wanted to do it because, I mean, it's not that I didn't want to do beauty, but I just knew that was what I was going to do as a secondary profession if I needed it. But I knew that I always wanted to find my way into the entertainment industry, and because I was lucky enough to get that break, you sort of don't know where it's going to take you at all. I don't think I had the same ideas that I have now about what I think I would like to do with my career. I was so innocent, which is actually really nice. You get to a certain stage in your life and you'll think, I need to get this done, this has to be done, I've got to crack this and deal with that. And back then, I wasn't like that at all. I just went with whatever was coming to me and I enjoyed it for what it was. And I actually think a lot of performers need to try and hang on to that because it can get very serious very quickly.
Yeah, where you're constantly thinking, I can relate very much. It's like thinking about, okay, what am I going to do once this project is done?
Exactly.
And then the fear sort of is
it just builds.
Looming in the back.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, this job is done. And yes, I'm going to try to enjoy this. But if you have that energy, I'm speaking from my personal experience right now, but of what's going to happen afterwards versus, okay, I'm going to make the most of it now.
Yeah.
Don't they say something about the beginner's luck? And I really feel like obviously you have the experience when you were in school and everyone believing in you and saying that, yeah, you are the performer, you are the artist who has this gift, because singing is also something that can't just be taught overnight.
No, exactly.
You know, so it sounds like, were you like in choir or something? Like, were you singing from a young age?
Yeah, I used to sing all the time when I was young. Was I? I'm sure, to be honest, I'm sure I was in a choir at some point. I did train with the Royal College of Music for a short period of time. At that point, I was young enough that I decided I didn't want to be a classical musician. And of course I wanted to do fun stuff and pop stuff, you know. So I did come out of the classical realm and just continued doing any plays that were at school, musical evenings, there were a lot of those, I was always part of that. We used to have assemblies, and if there was singing required, karaoke, talent contests, anything like that. I would always get myself into anything like that. And then when I was about 17...
So you did have the performance bug.
I did. I always had the performance bug. And someone did get me into, right before I went to do beauty, a theatre group, a younger generation theatre group. That was for a couple of years. And funnily enough, now I'm thinking about it, I didn't have stage fright when I was doing that. But I think maybe the magnitude.
The professional level.
Yes.
Yes. It's just so different, and I can just imagine, like, as you're painting that picture, you know, it makes me think of like Simon Cowell, you know, the big shows like UK's Got Talent or whatnot, and you know, you're in this big auditorium and this big massive stage, and okay, let's see what you've got, and to going from school to this, but sometimes it's just also in you, and it just needed to probably come out as you went to Spain, and then you know, you got offered the role. Then, so tell us about that journey and that experience of like touring across UK, across Europe.
It was such a big learning curve. It was such a beautiful experience. There was a lot of growth that happened with me wanting to learn so much about the character, about the industry, and really get to a point where people could see my performance and actually compliment me doing Diana Ross. And that was really important to me. I know there are a lot of performers, and there's nothing wrong with that. They just perform as they can and what's comfortable for them. But it became really almost an obsession of mine to make sure that I I got her mannerisms and her performance style correct.
So what would you do for prep? Like watch a lot of her like interviews and watching her perform and
Yeah, all her performances, her dresses, her wardrobe was unbelievable. So it was always trying to perhaps go and find dresses and whatever cat suits that were Diana Ross-esque. And it does change the way you perform. You know, at one point I had a feather boa with
Love
one
it.
of my dresses. It does change the way you
yeah,
perform.
like how you I know like when I came in here this morning, I was wearing sweats and my Uggs and I'm super comfortable and
Yeah.
then it's like okay, you change, you wear a dress, you wear heels, you walk different.
You do.
You
do.
If I was sitting here in sweats, which I super love, you're sitting different
Yeah.
than when you're sitting in a dress and you know
Exactly.
it's like corseted a little bit and it's like okay, we're gonna sit up.
Yeah, it changes everything, and I think that really helped. And so there was a Diana Ross section, there was also a Supreme section in the show, and at one point they needed a new young Michael Jackson because his voice is obviously his voice was so high, he was so young, and we did a medley of ABC, I Want You Back, and Rockin' Robin, and they looked to me to see if I would play Michael Jackson. So that was always a fun, interesting change. I mean, there were a lot of quick changes throughout this show because the show itself had Marvin Gaye, Four Tops, Temptations, and there was changes throughout. And then right at the end, there was always the quick change because Dancing in the Street was our final song right before we did the final Jackson medley. And of course I'm in a dress, I've got my wig on, and song finishes, I've got to get off stage, take everything off, put on my Michael Jackson gear. And they played an extra long intro. Dun, 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 and they would play that round a few times. So I had time to change. Let me tell you, I didn't get on time many a time, right? You know, the wigs, sideways, and you know, all sorts.
You're just like, adjusting everything as you're on stage, and you know your performers like the other actors like, hey, like
yeah, right.
let me fix that over there.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, and you know, if I'm changing back from Diana Ross or out of Diana Ross. I remember one time I was changing in the dark, had side zipper of the dress, and I went to do it up and it was stuck because I think just the chiffon on the dress and getting stuck in the zip, it's dark. And so it was midnight train to Georgia. And again, another one because it was a quick change, long intro. And so I'm like, how do I do this? How do I get on stage? So I just have to hold it together, and I'm off stage on LA, and they're like, I've got to get on stage now. I don't have time for this. So I had to sing the whole song and try not to turn to the side because the whole side of the dress was open.
No way! They're like getting an extra. Wow! Like even as you like hummed over your voice sounds so beautiful. Honestly, Baby Love has got to be one of my personal favorite songs, but that must have been such an amazing experience. Tell me about the travel element of it, and then I want to talk about what you learned in that process. But I feel like traveling and then performing and working and the pressure of that can be a lot on a performer, but it's also something that can get you high naturally because you're getting these different flavors from different countries and cities. So tell me, in total in 6 years, like how many different cities did you guys get to travel to?
We were all over England, UK, Europe, you know, Wales, Scotland, Cannes. We did shows in France. It was, the traveling was always the hardest part. You don't feel settled anywhere. you don't have a base anywhere and you're staying in multiple hotels. And as much as people might think, oh, isn't that great, isn't that wonderful, you know, when we were doing a show in London and then the show the next evening is in Scotland, that's a good 8-9 hour drive, and so you finish a show at 10 p.m.
You're just exhausted. Yeah, and then you have to pack up, so you never really fully unpack.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with an 8-9 hour drive, we need to get to the next venue. Sound check is always at 5, so we need to get there before 5, but we just finished a show at 10:30. We have to find how many hours to sleep? Not very many, because it's an 8-9 hour drive, but then you have to stop. Everybody needs to get something to eat, so that turns into 10, maybe traffic, you can look at 11 hours. So you have to factor that in from 10:30 to night before to getting there for 5 p.m. the next day. It was definitely a lot. You know, you go to bed and you're not able to sleep sometimes, but you have to, you're trying to. You can't really sleep in the van either. Everybody has a different body clock. You know, some people are up watching a movie or something, and then you're someone that's just trying to get a little bit of sleep, and you get to the venue and sometimes fans would be outside at the stage door, so you have to make sure you are presentable when you leave the van, and honestly you don't always feel like that. You know, you just want the cap on
and not talk to anyone,
the sweats on, and just walk in the back door, because you're just very, very tired and you have to find the energy. Now, of course, when you're on stage, it's very, very different. The adrenaline from the audience kicks in and you're at a 10 again, but it's before that.
And in between, and when hair and makeup isn't done, I know for me, it's like different person. Like if on a day, if I'm also not feeling well or whatever, or I'm low energy, put on some mascara, like a little bit of makeup, and you know, if I'm depending on the weather, if I dress up, it will give me that energy. But in between, you have to have some self-care, some like time alone, time
that
to
definitely
breathe.
was lacking.
You know, as I'm hearing all of that, like my question that comes to me right away is like, A, how long did you guys go on for at a time? And then B, what did your self-care look like? And how did you energize yourself? Like, even though I feel like I'm an extroverted introvert. Like, I love being out there at events, and sometimes people will message me, they're like, I don't even know how you go to all these events. I'm like, most of the events I go to, I'm getting paid because I'm working.
Right.
And then normally as soon as my job is done, I leave.
Yes.
So everyone thinks I'm at all these events, but I'm there for like, you know, I normally arrive before the event, I do my interviews, I do my bit, and then I go. I do my stuff for social media, and then I'm gone. So it's normally like 2.5 hours, and then I just like leave.
Yeah.
But then everyone thinks like, wow, Zara, that looks so
tiring.
But no, because I gotta take care of myself.
Yes.
Gotta get home and get my sweats and take my dog out. So what did that look like? Because when I'm imagining like on the road, I don't know about you, TMI, my tummy is very sensitive. When I'm traveling, man, I need to like do my yoga, I need to roll around and sweat, I need to breathe and have time alone, away from the people.
Yes.
How did
virtually impossible.
How was How was that?
I mean, you know, we probably start on a Wednesday and get home Sunday, and you know, Monday, Tuesday off. That was the time I had with my family, and usually the Monday is you trying to get yourself back into some semblance of normality.
Yeah.
And then anything else that you need to do has to be done on those 2 days, because now you're back on the road again. And on the road, self-care is extremely difficult. I almost want to say impossible. You know, where we would stay sometimes is on the motorway. They have hotels, because some people drive so much in the UK. And if you stay at one of those places, a lot of them don't have a gym, or it's not exactly, no one's going to be running along the side of the motorway. So,
Yeah,
you know,
there's no sauna.
no sauna,
Yeah.
and you're literally going in to get in the shower as quickly as you can, get into bed as quickly as you can, and sometimes we would try and drive halfway. So then we're not getting to the hotel till 3 in the morning. And then we still have to bring ourselves down from that and be ready to leave again sort of 10 at 11 the next morning.
It sounds like a lot of demand physically, emotionally, and mentally. Like, you must have grown exponentially during that experience. And if you don't mind me asking, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, how old were you when, you know, you auditioned that, and then from going to tour, and then, you know, doing that for 6 years?
So I started the tour when I was 18. So it was definitely a big, and I mean, in some ways I feel like it was a very good starting point for me.
Because you're thrown into the deep end, the pool, deep end, there you go, learn to swim now.
Exactly. I mean, there's always one story that I tell where my manager at the time, we were about to sing for one of the promoters, and we were doing Wider Falls, Fall in Love, and I needed to do a low harmony. And although I can naturally hear harmonies, the low harmony is not one I was able to hear. And he said, well, we're going to be going out in sort of 15 minutes, so you need to learn the harmony. And I'm thinking, but I don't know the harmony. And, you know, I'm 18, this is what is exciting to me, and then someone's saying, no, you need to know this harmony. So I get a bit upset, and he said, okay, but you still need to learn the harmony. And so I did feel the pressure of, I need to get this before I go out. And I know, you know, some people might say, oh, well, that sounds a bit harsh. But it taught me something very, very quickly, that people in this industry are trying to get something done. So you either step up or you step off, and make that decision for yourself, and make it quickly. Because if you know you can't handle it, just step off, because it will constantly be a burden to you, and constantly pressure. You will feel the pressure, and you yourself might crack, right? So if you don't think you can handle stepping up to the plate, then just don't do it. Don't try and do it and think, oh, well, when I go with somebody else, it's going to be different. It's not different. Everybody's trying to get a job done. And if you want to play the game, you're going to have to play by the rules. So.
Very well said. And like, you have to be flexible. You have to, you know, like now, like you've been working. I feel like what a great prep for you to go on to, you know, have the career that you've had now, and do the work that you're doing now, because you know how to work under so much pressure. In interesting circumstances where you're barely sleeping, barely having time alone, and just go, but that prepares you for the next level.
It does. You have to know when enough is enough for you, and don't expect somebody else to be, oh, are you okay, Natasha? You know, enough has to be enough for you, and when that's the case, you need to step up and say, look, I'm not doing this job, or I'm not available for this show. And you have to be firm in yourself and your beliefs. And I definitely feel that if I didn't have that start, I probably would have been, you know, a yes person. Like a lot of people can be in the industry. In the beginning, of course, I was, yes, of course, anything you need.
Yeah.
Until you learn that you need to take care of yourself first.
Yeah, what are your boundaries? What are your limits?
Yes.
And it sounds like that was a great experience for that. Like, and you know, to do that at 18, and you know, how old were the Supremes when they started?
They must have been pretty close to that age.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
19,
I would love
19.
to see you with the wigs right now. I'm like, I'm just imagining like the outfits and everything. That sounds amazing. Would love to see that show. So tell us about the journey of like, you know, making the decision of like, hey, I wanna, get out of UK. I want to move out to North America. When did that start? When did you decide that you wanted to pursue something out this way?
I think towards the end of the time, I didn't have the same drive to be in the show. I wasn't sure if it was me doing the same thing for too long, or I just didn't want to be part of the industry anymore. Because I know some people just grow out of it after a while and they want to do something more stable.
Yeah.
So I actually went on holiday. I met someone on holiday. He was Australian. I moved to Australia for a year and decided I'm going to do anything. Anything I want, whatever takes my fancy. It doesn't have to be anything in the industry.
Yeah.
So I went over there, and lo and behold, I find myself back into the industry again.
Of course.
I did a cabaret dinner show, and I was really enjoying that. But Australia, at that time and on the whole, it was a bit difficult with the lack of diversity to get into TV and film or anything like that. So while I was doing the cabaret show, the choreographer was discussing with me the ideas of talent scout that he knew. So I spoke to him, and he was discussing Canada and America with me, the differences, and explaining if I would want to go to either or. And by the time I finished in Australia, my partner and I split. I came back to the UK for 2 months, and I said to Mum, I'm going to go to Canada now.
And also with it being a Commonwealth
Yes.
state, do you think that helped? Did you come here under a young person holiday visa, or how did that work?
Yeah, it was a work permit. A work permit. And it was one of those situations where I could see it was a possibility. I went on a visitor visa initially because my first stage was, can I even get an agent to take a meeting with me? Let's start there. I was able to get a couple in Vancouver, a couple in Toronto. So I flew over on the holiday visa and then decided to get a work visa after I agreed to sign with the agent I still have now.
Wonderful.
So that was a nice experience, and it did feel like a fluid experience. So I felt that it was a good move, or the right move for me.
Yeah, like it was meant to be. It
Yeah.
sounds like it, like a lot of, it's when you read people's biographies and things, you hear that, okay, whether they end up in an unexpected place, like going with a friend to support them for an audition or whatnot, it's always been one thing after the next. Like I got into hosting so randomly. Like people always ask me, did you do a journalistic course or broadcasting or whatnot? Nope, nothing. Just curious about people and life. And it really just sounds like this is what you're meant to be doing, and coming to Canada and being an explorer and a seeker, going from traveling. So one question I did want to know, how many cities and countries in total did you guys end up performing in the 6 years that you were doing the Legend of Motown, right?
Magic of Motown.
Magic of
Motown.
the Legend.
Legend of Locket, Motown,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Definitely over 100. Definitely over 100. I feel like we were in every city in the UK at some point that had some theatre somewhere, anywhere. And then Europe. In fact, the show is still going. They spend more time in Europe now than when I was there, but Europe as well, that was not as many places. We spent most of the time. France used to be the main one.
And Canada's a great place to be. I used to live in Paris, so I summered in the south of France, Saint-Tropez, Cannes, Nice, Monaco, and then again, but, I can imagine when even getting to a place, whether you're driving or train or flying in, it takes your body time to settle.
It does.
And then to be like, okay, I have to go to this other place.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for people who do that, and going on for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, because I know I wouldn't feel. I feel like I mean, I'm just speaking now, like not having done that, I feel like I would be cranky. I would be like, I need a beach vacation right now, right now. I need to stay here in the south of France. You all go perform. Good luck. Au revoir.
Yeah, had enough. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there were definitely moments like that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if we ended up getting somewhere a bit later than we should,
Yeah.
you are just stepping out the van, stepping to your sound check. You do the sound check, and sometimes, goodness, whatever, the mic's not working correctly. Now it takes even longer. You're hungry.
Yeah.
The show is at 7:30. The sound check finishes late at 6:15, and you're now trying to find somewhere where you can eat to be ready for a 7:30 show.
Wow.
And so sometimes it's just anything.
And
anything.
eat something that sustains you, and you know it's not gonna upset your stomach, and you know just so many things. You're in different cities and different food, it's also very exciting. But you know, I'm looking at like both parts of it. So you know, you moved here, you got an agent, you know, going from Australia, being born in UK in a small town, you know, Surrey. Then you know, it's almost like the story of you know, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore, and you know, you've had this a bit of a whirlwind. You know, performing in many different cities and countries, and now you're here for almost a decade.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to hear about When Calls the Heart, and you know, doing about 36 episodes.
Yeah, I think we're there.
And it almost feels like that all the work you did there touring, it prepared you for your career now. And then, you know, obviously going on to produce and your feature film, which we'll talk about in a second. But tell me about When Calls the Heart and landing that role of Minnie.
So that one again felt like a meant to be moment. I had just gone back to the UK because COVID had hit. My mum wasn't well, and I knew I had to just go back and be with her. At which point I was thinking, I'm not going to go back to Canada anytime soon. What is going on now? Everything's shut down. Then my agent sends me an audition, and it's for When Calls the Heart. I see the role of Minnie. Okay, I'll do it. Obviously, I'm going to do it. And 2 weeks later, not even 2 weeks later, maybe 10 days later, they said, you've been shortlisted.
Amazing.
For the role of Minnie. And then on the Wednesday night in the UK, I was told at 8 p.m. in the UK that I booked the role, but that I needed to be in Canada by Friday.
No pressure. You know, you're just gonna fly on over, like, you know, Aladdin on his carpet. You're just gonna like fly on over, okay?
Yeah. So
you literally had to like fly the next day.
Yes.
And how are you gonna find tickets during COVID?
It was.
How are you gonna find a flight?
I just thought, even if I have to take 3 flights that stop anywhere else, I'm just gonna have to do it.
Yeah.
Because I need to get back, and luckily it was coming to Canada as opposed to going to the UK. With the time being behind, it
was
meant
in
I
your
could
favor.
Leave on Friday and arrive on Friday.
Oh my goodness.
So it gave me a little. I mean, you know, the cost of tickets at 36
5
hours notice.
Thank you, 10,000 pounds. Here you go. Good luck.
Exactly. It was definitely a quick turnaround for that one. I came back. I did my 2 weeks quarantine and started.
Bravo. I love the outfits on the show. And you know, I know Loretta from I did you go see the play yet?
I'm going tonight.
Oh, you are going tonight. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going tonight, but I'm going to be doing some interviews with them. I brought Ben on my show last year when he was in his old studio, and Tal is the other actor in it. He's a really dear friend. I'm so excited for them, and you know, to just go and support. I know they've been rehearsing for a while. So I just love period pieces and I love the outfits. Tell me about that.
It was actually a really exciting time when I got to go into costume and try on wardrobe. And the fabrics can be really heavy, Barbara, who does our costume, is absolutely amazing. She really works hard to find authentic fabrics and styles. So it was something I'd never done before, because everything else has been modern day.
Yeah.
So to be able to have that moment where I realized I was really about to be this character in the early 1900s is a very exciting moment for me.
That's fantastic, and obviously they have like a huge fan base. When Calls the Heart is an award-winning show, many nominations. I believe about 27 nominations, and you know your fans are called Hearties.
Hearties.
Yeah. So tell me about going into a show like that, knowing they already have a following. How did you feel?
It's sort of, you get two feelings, because you obviously hope that they like your characters, the family, your story. That was a big one. But then it's the excitement of being able to join such a long-running show and to be part of that wheel. And what's great about it, the crew has remained pretty much the same, maybe a few changes, and then of course the cast has remained the same. So it did very much feel like a comfortable space to be in, with everyone first being really welcoming, and then the Hearties. They were great when the story broke on E. They, you know, they were really in with positive comments, and they loved the idea of this new family, and it was one of those moments where you definitely feel like this could be something good. This could be something very positive for my career, but also in general what the Campfields represent.
Completely. Tell me about some days that you've had on set on When Calls the Heart, or even since moving to Vancouver to Canada, that you know you had a moment where you went like, wow, like I'm really on the right path, like I made the right decisions. You know, it's not been easy. There have been times that I've been tested and pushed to my limits, but my goodness, I feel so blessed in this moment in time. And it sounds like there have been quite a few, but I would just love to hear, because I know when I have those moments, I just want to earmark, like bookmark that chapter and just be like, I just want to feel this in my body, like, wow, how good this moment feels. Like this day has just been flawless, you know? Like it's, everything goes well, and from the crew, from the crafty lady, the PAs, like, you know, everything's flowing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, my first time of that happening was when I actually did book my first job here, and I remember it so vividly, where I was standing, what time of day it was. It was 5:20 in the evening.
And what show is that?
And I called my mum, and it was 1:20 in the morning.
Yeah.
Mom, booked my first job.
She's like, what's wrong? You're like, oh, nothing's wrong. Yeah, I just booked job. I wanted to tell you. Yeah.
And you just realize I did something. I did something, and it worked. But there was definitely, when I maybe booked my first guest star recurring on Unreal, that was a huge deal. And the way that came about, I was worried because we were coming to the end of my final work visa, and the dates were crossing over. And I thought, oh gosh, no one's, because sometimes the companies will pay for the extra visa, or they'll get you another visa to extend it. And I thought, well, they're not going to do that for me. I'm probably not going to be able to keep this booking. And they did it. They did it, and they extended my visa, and I was able to actually do the show. So that was a really big deal as well for me, that finally something, they're helping me to stay in Canada. I feel like I am supposed to be here. But there's definitely a couple times on When Calls, maybe the 9th season, I went onto set and I was in the green room and all the chairs were there, and it was in the cafe and no one else was there, and I filmed the whole cafe, and I just said behind the camera on the video, you know, just, you are really here.
Oh.
Yeah, So there have been a number of moments like that over the years, and I think with everything, you know, there's the ups and the downs, and when you get to the next
because
stage.
this career is so, I mean, obviously you've had these remarkable moments in this show, and then we're going to talk about your film shortly, but when you're an actor and you're auditioning and it's a career of like rejection, like a week Friday, I get an availability check and I have something to tape, and then they're like, oh, could we actually, there's a few changes they want to make in your tape. And you know, I say yes, even though I was so happy with it. Long story short, I ended up not getting the job. I found out on a Monday. My character died. My character is no longer alive at the end. I caught myself, and you know, just going through the motions of it, and I had such a busy day. But I feel like for people who are like working or who've had like much bigger careers than I've had, but even for myself, like I love to ask other actors or even entrepreneurs, how do you deal with that rejection? You know, to not, it's just so easy to be like, oh, I just don't take it personally. I know for me,
You really
yeah,
do.
yeah, and I'm always curious, like, you know, okay, what could I have done better?
Yes.
What is it that the other person did that I didn't do? And there's a part of me, I'm not gonna lie, I'll be very honest, that I'll be like, what am I doing wrong? And then I'll be taking it personally. But you know, it's like after 24 hours, I can just like let it go and be like, okay, I'm gonna go for a hike or a long walk and just remove it energetically. And then, of course, when you have the wins, they're so much more sweeter. So when you say that it made me emotional because I've had those days where it's like, you're like, this is real, this is not a dream, this is not a dream.
This is really here.
Yes, yes. That's so beautiful. And of course, like what you said, what that family represents.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that and how television is changing, and obviously you're part of the change, and not only acting but actually making your own projects.
Yes. I have to say first that being part of that change was definitely a scary position to be in. You feel some level of pressure because you want to represent correctly and you want to tell the stories in a favourable way. And that was definitely something that Viv and I spoke about a lot, trying to get right. Luckily, Hallmark, the directors, everyone on the show, they were very accommodating. They wanted to hear what we had to say about the stories they had in mind for us. They wanted to include, there were so many things they included in season 8. There were things that, you know, we were happy to explain and share and look at the script and say, well, it wouldn't quite happen like this. This is how it would be, perhaps a little more realistic. And so they were very accommodating with that, and those changes were implemented, and they are there in season 8, which we really appreciated. It feels a little bit surreal to be part of a change like that on a show that maybe 5 years ago I thought there's not a chance.
Yeah.
And to know that time came around, it's a big deal for the whole industry.
Of course.
A big deal, and being able to tell our stories in some way, obviously in line with Hallmark and their values and such, but still being able to talk about things that were important to the African American experience, and even in the small ways that they were put in, and we didn't want to harp on them because we also wanted to share the positive experiences. Of course there were negative experiences, but clearly not everyone failed. You know, people got through and did things and succeeded, and that's, I think, where we landed with the Canfields, making them a successful family and trying to make sure that the audience can see that, you know, they managed through going through many towns, they found Hope Valley, and now they're sharing their cultural experiences with the town, and they seem to be a good part of the community and just sort of fit in a nurturing way, which I really love.
I love that. I love that. And you know, I've known Viv for quite some time. Always supported me, like no matter what show or event. And I think down on West Fourth, I did some holiday event. And before that, I had interviewed him at the UBCP Actor Awards. This is like 8 years ago or 7 years ago. And you know, always come out to support. Always, whenever I've asked, and just through even social media, and you know, to see you guys also doing the movie together, which I want to talk about, and even from the sides that I had received, like I don't know, back in November or October, something like that, they were so sweet, and it just was so. And when I saw the name Viv Leacock, and I just knew you from, you know, social media, and we hadn't fully met, and I thought how fantastic that you guys are using your platform to go on to create something.
Yes.
And then now you get to decide what happens in this story. So let's talk about your film. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you. Legend of the Lost Locket was...
Which is the new name.
Which is the
new name!
The new name!
I'm trying to remember what is the older name.
It was originally called The Hunt for Love.
Voila.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The legend, it sounds very like Indiana Jones finds love, you know? The Legend of the Lost Locket.
Yes, right?
Yes, I love it.
Lots of L's.
Yeah.
I feel like a nice, memorable title. It's the Legend of the.
It's very well, but it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's really. I mean, The Hunt for Love. I like it as well, but it makes me think of like a reality show, like, you know, it could be maybe because I watched too many, but the legend, it's you're like I'm going on an adventure, which your character does.
Yes,
so
she does.
Yeah, so tell us about the process of, you know, getting this movie done and where it came about.
So Viv and I had already known, because the Hearties were so receptive to us, which we were so grateful for. We always knew we wanted to find something that fit for us, like a modern day theme. And then it was just about discussing when would be a good time to broach the subject of this, who we were going to speak to. And the conversation came up, and he said, well, I know Michelle Rishi, she did the Haley Deans, she wrote on those, and you know, we were talking about you still have contact with her, and maybe we can try and go to her with the concept and see how she feels about it. So we initially we went with a similar concept to what it is now, but it had gone further in the direction of a full-on mystery. But we knew in the end that how we could pitch it to Hallmark with the contacts we had available, it wasn't on the mystery side, so we had to veer it in the rom-com side. So we spoke about him wanting to remain in that field of detective work. I wanted to stay British. We wanted to kind of bring in the banter that we have naturally between us in there. We always spoke about the British versus American English differences and all of that kind of stuff, and how it will affect the humour that can come from that, the simple humour that can come from that, the misunderstandings, the arguments, disagreements, and all of that. And we thought, well, that could be quite a nice extra layer.
And he's the sheriff. He's the town
sheriff.
Okay. Yes.
In
yes.
America.
Okay.
Yes. And I take myself to America, to this small town, because as the British antiques dealer, my mother owned the shop before me, and she was looking for the other half of the locket in order to sell it and get the money to expand the business. Unfortunately, she was no longer with us, and I decided to continue the business. searching for the locket, and I managed to get some nugget of information with name switches, and it sent me to this town.
And the locket gives you, I'm trying to recall, does it grant some wishes or like some?
It's supposed to grant the wearer true love if they can reunite the two halves of the locket, because it was a love locket.
Oh la la!
So,
Wow!
you know, is that a superstition? Just a little superstition in there?
I love it.
Does it?
Oh, it sounds so lovely. It sounds like my next movie I need to watch. It sounds very lovely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, you know, I can't wait to watch the movie and very excited to see what's going to be next for you. It really sounds like, you know, everything is working out, whatever, you know, you're obviously meant to be a performer. You know, you've had this fantastic journey in Europe, in UK, and now you're a Canadian.
Yes.
And making your own projects. Before we let you go, I would love to hear what truly inspires you in life.
I get inspired by any outside of the box ambitious concepts, because I love when I see people trying to do things that perhaps maybe isn't naturally in their wheelhouse, and they just go for it anyway. I really like seeing, it inspires me when I see people doing things like that. And it definitely did inspire me to have the tenacity and continue the way I did, and have the ambition to just go from country to country trying to figure it out.
Yeah, just jumping in instead of
Yeah.
trying to figure it out perfectly. So everything, all the T's and dots and I's, everything is perfect versus like going for it. And as you make the mistakes and learn the lessons, that's where the gift is. Is there something you would like to say the 18-year-old Natasha today? If there's something you could say to her, what would you say?
Keep going. Definitely keep going. I mean, obviously at that time there were so many moments where I felt, oh, this isn't for me, I'm not gonna get anywhere and things like that. And you know, I mean, obviously I didn't give up, but you know, I would have told myself to just hang in there and keep going.
Well, that's a great place to end the show. Natasha, thank you so much for joining. Congratulations
Thank you.
on all your success. Truly inspiring story. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Saturday in Kits, and thank you all for tuning in and for joining us. If you did feel inspired, do let me know. Until next time, I'm your host, Zara Durrani, and I'll catch you on Location with Zara, produced with the support of TELUS STORYHIVE. Today we're here on location in Kitsilano at the beautiful Simpatico family-run restaurant.